Brenda, welcome. I work in radio. You think I would know how to get that off? Hello, everybody. Hi. I'm running for State House Representative for District 54, which is southern Lorain County, most of the townships, the Lorain County part of Vermilion, and all of Huron except Wakeman and Bellevue. My district is a very gerrymandered district. I ran last year and I lost. However, I am not giving up. Because we need change in this state. We need a state legislator that will put people first. Absolutely. So my last year, my 4 points were equality for all, which you would think is kind of a given, but it's not. The interesting thing I did discover after my election is they did a survey of white males who said they were angry that the Democratic Party would only focus on the LGBTQ group. Why didn't they want equality for everyone? Well, we do. You know, my theory is you live your life, you do you, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, whatever, you know, equality for all. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and Brian touched on this, and I know you all had a lot of questions about this, is public schools. Our public school system is broken completely in Ohio. And we have a legislature who wants to create a for-profit private system. I was on the school board in Columbia Station for 8 years. I joined the school board because I saw something wrong in the community and I wanted to help fix it. So I learned about the vouchers, etc., for the charter and the private schools, and that they had no accountability. I mean, the auditors came to Columbia every year, dug through our boxes, made sure we were doing everything right, but that doesn't happen in a private or public school, and a private or voucher charter school, and they get our money. So our public education system, we need to stop the voucher money from going to the private schools. One, because there's no accountability, and two, because the public schools need that money. And their argument, and I've heard this so many times, is it wrong that I want a better education for my child? No, everybody does. But why does only your child deserve a better education? Every child in this state, in this country, deserves a better education. So that $1 billion they gave in voucher money breaks down to roughly $1 million to each district in Ohio. Which, you know, I mean, in a large district, maybe that's a drop in the bucket. But I know in my township, that's a good chunk of money. So we need to fix that system. We need to take the money out of the voucher program and make our public schools the better education for all children. The next thing, women's reproductive rights. I know we passed issue 1. We all worked super hard to get that done, but there's, in the state legislature, they are trying to make that go away. They are putting up laws that, you know, even if they're just performative, like I believe Gary Click created a bill that grants personhood to a fetus. Now, come on, seriously. And then there's one, I think it just passed, I'm not sure, Olivia's law that requires school districts to show ultrasounds of babies. So you can see that they're people before they're born. The fourth thing is dignity in work. Everybody deserves a decent job with good wages and good benefits. Everybody. You know, even though I think you all remember the state bill, the Senate Bill 5, where they were trying to bust the unions in Ohio. So part of Senate Bill 1 is busting the unions in the higher education. I mean, I know it was about DEI and academic freedom, which is god-awful. And another example of how our state legislature is mimicking the Trump regime. So they, I'm sorry, I just look like when I said Trump regime, because that takes me off on a whole different tangent of life. So they're trying to make the life harder for workers, and all of their programs that they have created to bring jobs to Ohio haven't worked. You know, we're losing jobs left and right. And I mean, and also when you say just jobs because they're not bringing in businesses, they're losing a workforce because they're doing such horrible things to our public education and our higher education. So this year, when I was looking at my little literature that I send out, I still have 1,000 pieces of literature left because like the one gentleman described and Brian said about the coordinated campaign, I was asked to order 1,000 more pieces of literature that somebody else was going to pass out for me, and it didn't happen. Well, I am pretty fiscally conservative myself, so I decided to order stickers and cover the endorsements because I can't use those this year yet. So what I've come up with is something that is even more urgent this year for my campaign, which is democracy first. Because we can look at Donald Trump and say, you know, oh my God, he's ruining our country, he's ruining our country. But that state legislature is mimicking everything that Trump regime does in Ohio. The catering to the rich, they just passed a flat tax rate. I think it's 2.75, I'm not sure. But I'm telling you, guess who's not taking home a lot of money from that? Probably everybody in this room. You know, ooh, maybe I'll take home more than 130 I get back every year from the state, you know, maybe 140. But catering to the rich, they're following that trend there. Probably in the worst case scenario that they're doing that is, as Brian mentioned, the $600 million stadium for the Haskins. Now, they say that's not money, that's not tax money, but it is.
Builds multi-billionaire.
Mm-hmm. And he's getting his money, and all these tax breaks, etc. And it's not even for a winning team. I mean, seriously. I mean, if they were Super Bowl champions, I'd be like, eh, not really. I still would agree with it, but my God, they suck. They suck totally. Okay. So the next thing on the list, and Brian talked about it a lot, is bad redistricting. Trump said, I want more Republicans in Congress. So what did Ohio do? They ran up and they said, okay, Mr. Trump, we're going to do that for you. Okay? It's bad enough we have the gerrymandering we do here now. I will tell you, you guys live, the people who live here, you're in a very gerrymandered district. You know, it is what it is, but we're working to fix that. But anyway, the bad redistricting is another idea from Trump. Then, as again, you know, following the Secretary of State, he gave half my speech for me about voter suppression. So the president says mail ballots are fraudulent. Well, guess what? Now we have Senate Bill 293 that takes away the grace period for mail-in ballots, which disenfranchises our seniors, our disabled, our military personnel. It's just ridiculous. We're just bowing down to him. And then you have the American Save Acts that they are, I don't think it's passed yet, but they want to make sure that your voter ID matches your birth certificate name. And who does that disenfranchise? Women. Exactly. Because most of us, it doesn't match. There was even a bill that was proposed that petition gatherer, signature gatherers needed a license to gather signatures. Because there were so many paid petition gatherers in Ohio from outside Ohio. Now, the license they want you to follow is, you've all done petitions. You see that little thing at the bottom that tells you what to do? That's all it is. You sign that. And I'm hoping that the government checks the petitions we turn in and says, you know, these are legal, etc. So all of this stuff that they're doing, it has all, for the last year, it's been hard for me to think about, you know, I know I was going to run again. Even after I lost, I knew I was going to run again. But the combination of the state and what the federal government's doing to it. So I've been going to protests since April. I've been protesting since April. And the interesting thing about that is, one, Ohio weather, like, kind of truly sucks. Like, there's only 3 months a year that the weather's good. But is the amount of people that continue to come out. Every time we protest, there are more people there. And we've been protesting in townships too, because, and people are like, why are you going to little places? And we say, because people need to know they're not alone, you know? We need to build that up and let people know they're not alone. And I don't even, you know, I mean, I've started talking to people about me running, but that's not why I go to the protests. I go to the protests because I see that there's a problem that needs to be fixed, and that it literally, I mean, seriously, Ohio was pre-gaming for Project 2025 2 years before Trump was elected. So, having said that, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. Hold on a second. I grew up in Berea, which is in Cobb County. I grew up in a working class family. My parents and all of their, my aunts and uncles worked in the trucking industry. Matter of fact, my son is now fourth generation. He's a FedEx supervisor and freight supervisor in Nashville. But anyway, so the trucking industry provided a great income for my family. My mom was a Teamster. We had the best health care. We always had everything we needed. But, you know, when times were bad, like strikes and layoffs, etc., my parents got out there and did the work. My aunt, who lived next door to us, and my mom went and worked the bingo halls on the weekend. And my dad would do the driving the advertiser door hangers around. So we would sit there, you know, we'd make a line in the kitchen, and we'd stuff those bags, and then my dad would take us out. There were three of us, so he'd pull into one driveway, three of us, you know, we're out there doing the work. So we were always a part of the survival of our family. I was raised with a serious work ethic. When I was 12 years old, my mother told me that I was going to college and I was going to pay for it by myself, which is fine. I'll tell you, honest to God, it was one of the best lessons I ever learned. So when I was 14, I got my first job. I was making $2 at the Dairy Queen, $2 an hour at the Dairy Queen. And up to the time I went to college, I would add another job to that during the summer. So I worked two part-time jobs in the summer to go to college. So, you know, I saved up all that money, whatever, but I still needed student loan. Now, mind you, when I went to school, college was not as astronomical as it is today. It was not. I saved up half of the money I needed each year. You know, I was making $2 an hour, you know. So I went to get my first student loan in 1981. No problem, sign the line here, whatever, you know, interest not gonna kick in until you graduate, whatever. So that was 1981. So then in 1982, when I went to go get my second student loan, they wanted to fill out a needs test. I had to fill out a needs test. And they had made the interest higher, and they had made it accumulate while I was in school. So, and the funny thing is they gave me less money because of what my parents made, who were not paying for my schooling, okay? So, of course, whose fault was this? The Reagan administration. This was the first time that politics had touched my life personally. So, I was, you know, I think that's the day probably I was like, you know what, I'm a Democrat for life. I'm done here. But interestingly enough, so I looked it up to see what had happened, because I love to know things. It's just me, I love facts. And so I looked it up while I was working on my speech, and one of the two policies that caused this to happen was something called the Graham-Latta budget in 1981. And guess who Mr. Latta is? He is the father of Bob Latta, which makes you wonder if being a Republican is a genetic thing. Okay, so go to college. I went to college for radio and TV. I've worked in Cleveland radio for 30 years. After the pandemic, they sent us all home. They didn't fire us, but they sent us home, and they regionalized. So currently, I am the regional traffic supervisor for Odyssey Radio for the New England region, which means I have 5 markets: Boston, Springfield, Hartford, Atlanta, and Providence. And what a traffic manager does is I schedule the commercials, which actually is a very kind of exciting job because it's like putting a puzzle together every day. But at the end of the day, I manage time and money. I have to maximize that time to make the most revenue for the company. That's what I do. It's like, I mean, I'm managing like $3 to $4 million a month. You would think they would pay me more, but they don't. Consequently, I worked part-time jobs up until I was 7 months pregnant with my oldest son. So, get married, 2 kids, moved to Columbia Station. There was a levy came up in the town that outraged all of the older community members, including my aunt, uncle, and my mother. And because they know me, they know if you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, I have to find out the answer. So I went and researched this levy. And and I'm always a supporter of school levies, but it was crazy. This $22 million complex, and I mean, our town is like this big, okay? So we go to this meeting, and I have all my facts, and I realize, one, that the community has no idea what they're talking about. And 2, the board is super defensive, and actually hostile to the community. But somewhere during this meeting, when the community was saying something, I stood up and I said, well, actually that's not true. And the people were like, aren't you on our side? I'm like, yeah, but, facts are important. So that's when I decided to run for school board. Ran for school board, great 8 years of my life. I was the president for 4 years. I served on the JVS board. I learned all about public education, how it's controlled by the Ohio Revised Code, again, how the charter schools don't have accountability, everything, unfunded mandates. I learned it all. And the best part of it, being on that school board, it was a nonpartisan position. None of us knew what the other person's politics were. Because you know what? It didn't matter. It didn't matter because we were there to do what was best for our community and our students. I did not run for a 3rd term because my mom and aunt got sick at the same time. But I did continue to be active in school legislation, standing up for the schools, getting the information out there, working in my community. So, post-pandemic, joined the, of course, the 2016 election was a turning point, and then January 2021 was a super turning point that you would have stopped the trajectory of fascism in this country, but no. So then I joined the Lorain County Rural Democrats, and I did their social media. And I was at a meeting in 2023, and the guy who ran in 2024 said, you know what, I'm not running again for State House. And they said, anybody else want to? And I raised my hand. Because you know what? Somebody's got to do it. And I feel like I'm qualified to do it because of my work on the school board. I'm a good communicator. I love looking at both sides of an issue. I love facts. And I'm a good, my mother used to say I would start an argument in an empty room, but I'm a good debater. And I really think that, I'm not going to show up and be the magical person who makes all the changes. Even if it were an even slate, you can't walk into a legislature that size and do everything and change everything right away. But I think it would be good to have somebody there for balance. We need more Democrats in that legislature. There's just, it's so, the supermajority has had control for so long, and they have messed up so much. Everything they want to do is for profit. They want to do it for rich people. It's like they don't care about the rest of us. And we need somebody in there to do the work, to make the difference. I mean, I know that, I don't want to say all Republicans are bad, because they're not. There are bad Democrats too. But I think we need people who can go in there and start working, kindness, decency. We have lost that in our country. And we need that, and I think that's what we're going to need to cross that divide. Just like if you met somebody who came up to you and said, man, I voted for Trump, but boy, am I sorry. Now, in your head, you're going, I told you so. But we can't do that. We need to give people grace, and that includes our legislatures too. So I'm ready to go in there. I'm a problem solver, I'm a quick learner, I'm a great communicator. Well, that sounds like Reagan, sorry, scratch that. I'm a good communicator, and I think I can make good things happen for us in the State House and take care of District 54, because I learned so much about the townships and how they're beholden to the state legislature when I ran in 2024, and how much the state legislature has shorted the townships in the same way they have shorted the schools. And now they've made the local governments and the public schools, through the whole property tax issues with property, they've made the schools and the villages and the townships and the cities the villains in the picture. And we need to change that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Brenda. First of all, thank you for running. Obviously, it's very important that we don't let these incumbents just slide right back in. They have to have a fight. We have to try to keep running against them. So thank you very much for doing that. So we did get a couple questions for you, and you actually just sort of talked about this. So there. The one question is, can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on the, oh, you didn't talk about this, I was reading another one. This one, what will the change in property tax laws do to our public schools, and how can we protect them? What can we do to try to protect them?
Okay, so first of all, the property tax changes, one, are not for everybody. Not everybody is going to benefit from those changes. You know who's going to benefit the most? The wealthy people, not the rest of us. So they're not across the board. What it's going to do is it's cutting down this 20 mil floor, which please don't ask me to explain that to you because that's hard. But, and I don't quite understand it myself, but basically what it means is it's going to take money away from our school districts. And it's also going to give the county commissioners the ability to say whether or not the schools have asked for too much money. So, yeah, it's going to cut so many budgets, so much money. And then what it does, and see, here's the thing, is if the legislature wanted to fix this, you know what they would do? They would give the schools the money they need to run. Okay? We would not be as reliant on property taxes if the state would fund the schools as they should. So that's the first thing. But now what they've done is they've made the school the villain. So like, I would look online and see, you know, to be like, well, the school districts are stealing all our money. So what we need to do, actually, is come up with a comprehensive plan that funds the schools as they should be. Like, you know what would be really nice is giving them $2 billion they promised to the voucher program back to the schools. So that's what they need to do first. And then the other thing we can do, I guess, is just vote Democrat. And the problem is, though, is now they forced, so the only place that a school can get money other than the state is property taxes, okay? But now they've made everybody angry about property taxes, so nobody's gonna vote. And you know what, I don't want to be a conspiracy person here. I mean, I gotta be honest, when Hillary said it was a vast right-wing conspiracy, I was like, really, Hillary? However, I think this whole property tax thing, a lot of it, is to push the public schools out of business so they can build for-profit schools for the state. So the most important thing we can do is, one, pay attention to what they're doing, talk to people in your school districts, and get the word out there that these property taxes aren't for everybody. The main person they're going to hurt are the schools. And let me add, too, because the focus is on the schools, because the legislature is really, you know, like I said, out to get the schools. But what's happening too, the side part of this is, when they do this with this 20 mil floor and everything, they're taking money away from our cities and our villages and our townships. Money that goes to them from property taxes for your roads, your safety, your EMS, etc. Now, in Columbia Station, again, not a huge township, we're going to lose $67,000, which doesn't sound like a lot. But when your budget's like under $5 million, you're gonna, you know, that's a lot. That's a big chunk of change. So what we need to do, again, is get them to make better legislature for that. The one thing they did do that's interesting is, so they doubled the homestead exemption, which goes to senior citizens and disabled people and veterans. Now, normally in the past, the homestead exemption was reimbursed to schools and communities by the state. So they've doubled it, but they're not going to reimburse that second half. So again, those, they're losing more money. And it's a circle. It's a circle. They take money away, they blame the property taxes, and then everybody gets mad at the villages and the cities and the schools when they should be pointing the finger at the legislature.
Thank you. So, another question is, can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on the bill to create a data center commission, which was introduced by Dieter and Click, that you've already mentioned?
So, it's a good idea. I'm not going to say it's not. I think it's a good idea. I think that if you see an issue where people are concerned, it's good to put together a commission to discuss it. Now, that being said, I guess I read something where she had said, well, they were going to put a moratorium, add that to the bill for 1 year, but they didn't think it would pass. So, like I said, not a bad idea, okay? But that committee is going to be filled with what? Say it with me. Thank you. It's going to be
corporate
filled.
interests.
Thank you. And what do Republicans like? Corporate interests. So they're off, again, like Brian was talking about the tax rebates and everything. They're going to do that for the data center. And they're going to do this, she's already said they're inevitable. They're inevitable in Ohio. But if you look, when this whole thing came up, I looked at where they're doing data centers around the state. Almost every one of them is like right outside a city. And all this Ohio fund money, like they gave to Lorain County for the water plant that's supposed to help the data center, all of these other plans were built on pre-existing sites. Like one was an old power, what am I saying, factory, power station. They're building them in industrial areas where it makes sense to do it. But, we've got all this land now, and they've snuck their way in to all of this land with the developers. So, like I said, it's a great idea. Do I think it will do anything? No, because you can't have a commission that makes files a report of all the people who support the report, who are going to support the outcome they want. So that's where I don't think it's a good idea. As for the data center, I think a moratorium would be a great idea. I think that, I don't think it's right that they were like, oh, let's rezone all this and not tell you what it's going to be there for. And I know when I was running, one of the things I did learn in 2024, they had a committee put together that was reviewing zoning, okay? Now, your townships have their own zoning, but it's all compliant on Ohio Revised Code because a township does not have home rule. So they had this committee put together about making universal, sorry, I can't do co-park, so I'm holding the microphone, universal zoning laws. And when I read the testimony from the proponents and the opponents, all of the proponents were people who wanted to make money off of the township lands. So I think that we need to maybe take a step back, maybe put a moratorium on it, and think more about, there's got to be, like in Lorain County, they've got Midway Mall that the sale fell through. That'd be a good place to put a data center. You've got it, it's open there. And the thing about data centers is they talk about, oh, it's going to increase our jobs in Ohio. No, not really. There'll be an influx of jobs while they're building it. But when the data center is built, 20 to 80 people at tops are going to work there. So it's really not that much of a benefit to our state. And it's certainly not a benefit to our townships. Again, they're trying to, I think they're trying to consolidate the townships, to be honest with you. I think that's what they're going to want to do with the schools too. There's 600 districts and school districts, and I believe there's like 1,308 townships. So they want to try to consolidate those, which I don't agree with. Because you know what? We all, I moved to the township because I wanted a smaller school system. And I wanted to live in a community that I didn't have a bunch of businesses there. And I wanted to know everybody in my township. And if they continue to do this, pushing their money and power, etc., they're going to destroy a lot of what's great about Ohio.
Thank you. So you touched a bit on voter suppression and the laws that have been passed recently that are making it more difficult for people to vote or get their ballots in on time. So do you have a plan to go to the State House if you got elected and fight against this? What would you try to get passed?
Oh, I would absolutely work on passing laws that one would get rid of, Senate Bill 293. But I would pass laws that would make more ballot boxes available, would definitely make it easier to for the absentee ballots. Now this stuff about you have to, if you deliver it for somebody else, you have to go into the Board of Elections and drop it off there, and I think you might have to show your ID, I'm not sure. So I would try to do everything I could to make it easier for people to vote. When Allison Russo was here before, I asked her about automatic voter registration. And she didn't think that was a good idea, but I did like her idea too, is you ask all of your government offices to have that option when you go in. Are you registered to vote? Get you registered to vote. So I would definitely create bills that made it easier for people to vote.
Great. Good. So I don't know, I'm sure there's people out there who, like me, feel like the Ohio State House is utter chaos, constant railroading and road blocking. What's your plan for, if you got elected, to go in and reach across the aisle, to work with the supermajority that has been in control for so long? Like, how do you propose actually working with them to get something done?
Well, I think, I will be honest, Kelly and I, my opponent, we get along. Now, are we buds? Do we hang out, go get our nails done together? No. But we get along. And we find that there are certain areas we agree on. And again, she's not a bad person. I'm just against the way she blindly follows her party. I mean, that's pretty much it, that's it. I would try to reach out and start discussions. I think that's the best way. Again, you find common ground. You find common ground and you have these discussions. Because at the end of the day, everybody has their story. Everybody has a story. And you just have to find a place where your story intersects with somebody else. And I think that can be done in the State House. I don't see, I see there's occasional some bipartisan stuff there. So, I don't know how much of a change I can make, but I think a little start is a good start. Make that effort to be nice. I was at a redistricting, the thing in New Russia Township, and there was a gentleman there, and he's the Republican candidate for District 52, and he's also part of the Farm Bureau. He gave this great, speech at the about farmland presentation and whatever, and I went up to him and I'm like, "Thank you so much. You did a great job." And he was startled. I don't know, but I think that there's that veil that we put up there ourselves, like the incident where I said where the school board was so hostile to the community. I think it's important to try to make it, you find that common value and you try to work together. And I think it could be done. I think if there's enough Democrats in there, I think we can get it done.
Great. So you can touch on your views on vouchers and how they are affecting the public school system. Along with that, I'm assuming that would be one of the major issues that you would want to work on. Are there any other issues, or is that would that be your main focus if you were elected?
Well, I think, you mean with the schools?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, a lot, so much. We need to, all of these bills that they put up about putting up the 10 Commandments in the school and letting kids leave early to go to LifeWise Academy. Religious separation of church and state, argument aside, every time you create something for a school to do, it creates more work for them, okay? So one thing I would definitely want to do is get rid of unfunded mandates, where they tell the school to do something and there's no money to do it. I found this when I was on the school board. So for LifeWise Academy, they don't open the doors and just let these kids run out and get on this bus. At a school, you have to know where everybody is at all time. So now you've added extra work, created chaos during the day. Those kind of laws, and I wouldn't even base it on the whole religious issue. I'd be like, you are creating chaos in the schools. Just like they're changing, we no longer have a state board of education, okay? It's like 3 people now. They've kicked them out of their building. We have a Ohio director of education, I think it says education, it's workforce. He's director of the workforce. You have one guy in charge of the school curriculums. So the first thing I would love to do is get rid of the testing, because that's a huge, huge issue with me. Another thing that the Republicans created that built $1 billion industry. We need to get rid of the tests because they are a detriment to our children's education. We need to go back to what public education meant, which is schools, and this is where they get confused. Schools are not there to teach you what to think. They're there to teach you how to think. And we have lost so much of that. You know, just taking out the music and the arts programs, and you know, and then the history deniers. Oh my God. You know, and literature. I will tell you, when I read Anne Frank's diary, I could not have learned that history any better than through literature. You know what I'm saying? And the sad part is, and I think we all know when we read it and we were horrified and we cried, and then we went, we live in America and that could never happen. Yeah. So that's what I would want to improve our education. I would want to get better pay for our teachers because they definitely deserve it.
Well, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Brian. How can people support your campaign?
I have cards over there with all my social media information on it and QR code to donate. Donations, of course, are fantastic. I know times are hard, so whatever you can give would be greatly appreciated. As Brian said, follow me on your favorite social media, if I'm on there, and share it with your friends and comment. The other thing that I think is a great idea, and it takes not that much time, after you leave here, if you pick up one of my cards, take a picture of both sides and send it to your friends. And said, hey, you know, I heard her speak today. She is just like the cat's meow. And I think you should vote for her. So, and then just talk among your friends, just share the word, because I know, you know, in rural, there are 32 or 33 townships in this district. And, you know, it's going to be hard to canvass this district. It really is. But if you go out there and you talk to your friends and you spread the word, I think that's, word of mouth is probably the best thing you could ever do for me. Can I take Rick's question?
Brenda, just a quick question. Since this summer when we were at our protest downtown here, across the street, unbeknownst to any of us, until he exited the building, was Vivek Ramaswamy with Europe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Walked out and everybody's like, are you kidding me? Fortunately, our media guy went over. But how do we get people, strong Democrats, to come and speak for you?
You know, I don't really know if I have an answer to that. I mean, it would be great. Like I said, I also think that one of the, like I said, the protests have seriously encouraged me about the state of our country and the state of this next election, because so many people come, they are kind to each other, we share stories, we learn. You know, now we were talking about younger people. We're getting younger people at the protests, you know. We're getting older people at the protests, you know. It's fantastic. So I think it's just going to be, people are going to need to communicate to each other. And I will tell you that, even though I kind of dissed the Sherrod Brown coordinated campaign about my flyers, however, when I'm going out and I'm doing my canvassing and I'm talking to people, I'm not just going to talk about me, the endless, fascinating subject that I am. I am going to talk about Joe Miller, I'm gonna talk about the other two guys who are running for State House Representative in Lorraine County. I'm gonna talk about Sheriff Brown. I'm gonna talk about Allison O'Brien, because we need to all do this together. If we don't put in the work, you know, we're not gonna get this done. And we have the momentum right now. We really, really do. So get out there, you know, talk to your friends. We're gonna need boots on the ground too. So if you wanna volunteer, that would be fantastic. And thank you so much for coming out on this cold day and listening to me talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, folks, so we know it's a bit of a long format, so go ahead and take a break or take a little intermission.